What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here. So obviously, different setup today because I'm house sitting for some friends. They also have a lot of cats, so hopefully they won't be making a whole lot of noise, but if you know cats, you know that they like to make noise at the most inopportune times. So we'll see if any of the noise that they make even comes through all the way down here downstairs. But for now, we're here to talk about Chelsea kicking off the weekend with a win. It's always good whenever you're the first game of the weekend to win it, because if you don't win it, then the rest of the weekend just feels kind of like pointless to watch, because basically you're watching your rivals, most of them pick up points on you, which is just not a good feeling. So I typically don't enjoy watching the rest of the weekend if we lose the first game. Yeah, we pick up a win, first game back from the international break at the King Power. Not a perfect performance, and I will definitely talk about some of the criticisms I have, because it was pretty rough going there for large majority of that game, and even near the end it was not put to bed like it should have been. So first of all, discuss some of the stuff going on outside of the game. We'll start with the biggest story, which is James seemingly being injured again. Now, they did say this was more precautionary because he said he felt something, so they're just taking it easy just in case. But here's the thing, they've said this before. It's been this way before with him where, he's just a little something, he should be back soon, and then all of a sudden we don't see him for another 10, 15 games. So I'm kind of at the point now where I think his time is coming to a close at Chelsea. I don't know who's going to take him. It's more likely he's just going to run his contract down, because I don't know many teams out there who'd want to take a player that is so injury prone, but we can't rely on him anymore. I mean, he plays, 5 to 10 games per season these days? So you can't rely on that. And whether it's because he's got some physical thing that is just not going away, or whether it's because he has a mental blockage that he just can't get past a certain point because he's worried about hurting himself again, whatever the case, it's very clear he is no longer a reliable player to have on your team. So I'm kind of at the point where he shouldn't really be our captain anymore. And I feel like we need to start looking for other options, because Gusto has kind of been having a rough run of form at the beginning of this season, so he's not looking the good backup that he was last season for James. But we need another option there, because we don't really have much else. And Achimpong, or I think that's his name, obviously there was the whole drama with him not wanting to sign a new contract because he was being upseated by Disasi. So it's definitely something that I hope the club is looking at and kind of figuring out a solution to, whether it's he's not actually injured and this was just a mental, oh crap, I might be hurt again. I don't know. But I definitely, hearing that news again, it's one of those, this is not the first, second, or even third time that we've had this reaction of again. It's becoming a consistent issue every season now. And it's just, you can't rely on players like that, unfortunately. So nothing against him. Obviously, I've had my issues with some of his playing whenever he has shown up. I think sometimes he can be a little bit lazy, and then on top of that, he had some stupid moments last season where he got himself sent off. So I just don't think he's reliable as a player anymore, and I do think it's time to move on from him and find another option at right back. But the other thing to talk about outside of our performance is the referees, because there will be some debate on whether or not that was a penalty from Fofana. In my opinion, it's not. Fofana does kind of stick his leg out, but it's very clear the guy dives over his leg. There's not any contact there, and referee didn't give it, so not enough to overturn it on the field. But in my opinion, that's not the biggest talking point of the game. The biggest talking point is another red card challenge on Cole Palmer. Goes completely missed. Oh, it's a yellow card. No, it's not. Martinez catches him, studs to his thigh. Yellow card, nothing further. That's ridiculous. And now we've got studs down the back of the calf, which led into a scissor challenge. That's 2 reds right there. Straight leg studs and then scissor challenge from behind. That is 2 red cards in one challenge, and the guy walks away with a yellow card. And VAR says, we're good there. You've got to protect the best players in the league. People have talked about this for a while now. Every time Salah gets kicked, every time Saka gets kicked, every time Bruno Fernandes gets kicked, all these other teams, the fans of those clubs, they always go into a frenzy whenever their best players get kicked, and we got to protect them. Refs should be doing more to protect these players. This is two red card challenges, and VAR has done nothing about it. And the thing is, I know they're trying to give more power to the center ref. This is too where, first of all, the center ref should be seeing it because it looks ugly from the get-go. Like, you could see it live. It looks like a bad challenge. So the fact that he's not given a straight red in this game and whoever it was in the Man U match, the fact that neither of these refs gave straight reds for these types of challenges is already kind of pathetic. But then the fact that VAR doesn't step in, again, I know they're trying to give more power to the center ref, but these are the types of challenges we should be cutting out of the game. These are the types of challenges where back in the day before VAR, ref would have given a yellow, they would have come back retrospective ban and said, actually, that was worthy of a red, so we're going to ban you for that. But obviously they're not going to do that because VAR in real time said, no, yellow's okay. So they're not going to ban him for what is an awful challenge. And it's, again, our best player is getting these challenges on him. And honestly, I don't know how much of it is from the challenge, but Palmer doesn't really look up to speed right now. And obviously he pulled out of the England camp because he was feeling something. I don't know if that's just to protect himself. I don't know if he's feeling something. But he caught studs to the upper leg, and now he's got studs coming down his calf. He didn't look at it today. Some people will say, oh, well, that's just because he's not really that great of a player. I disagree. I think he showed last season he's a good player, and he showed quality this season so far as well. It was up until that Martinez challenge that we were seeing how good he can be. And since then, it was not a great performance against Arsenal, and now today looked a little slower, and then he catches that challenge as well, and he looked like he was hobbling at the end of the first half. So for me personally, I have to look at that and go, who cares about the Fofana challenge? They should have been down to 10 men early on in the first half because that challenge, clearly worthy of a straight red, in my opinion. But moving on to our own team, first of all, talk about Maresca and some of his decisions. I actually thought his lineup, at first I was a little concerned seeing Badiashile in there, and it looked a little weird, but when I actually saw how they were setting up, I thought it was a fine solution given who was missing today. With Gusto out, with Neto out, he kind of switched it up a little bit. And I'm glad for that because, honestly, some of my frustration in the past few games before the international break was that it felt like he was a little too stubborn, like he wasn't willing to make changes. But today he showed, it was kind of forced upon him to be fair, but he could have just, all right, let's force some of these players in that aren't ready, throw Mudryk in there, try to swing maybe Vega in there. I don't know. I don't even know if he was on the bench today, actually. But just try to force it to where now Fofana's your right back and you got Felix playing out on the left, but he didn't do that. He brought them in and he made it to where we had more of a back three going forward with Cucurella providing the width on the left and Madueke on the right. And then Felix and Palmer were kind of your two in behind with Caicedo and Fernandez providing a bit of support there. So I thought that worked out pretty well, especially with that back three of Badiashile, Colwill, and Fofana. I thought it gave them a little bit more protection because obviously with Badiashile and Fofana, you're going to have mistakes back there. But with Colwill kind of being the sweeper to clean up a lot of stuff, and then you got two right in front that are also helping out, I thought we handled that very well, and it kept us from dealing with too much of an issue for most of the game. Obviously, we'll talk about the second half in a bit with some of these players, but I do think the way Maresca set it up was good. His subs were too late again. I feel like around the 65, 70 minute mark, I was feeling like a change needed to happen. Like we were in control of possession, but we were not creating enough to get that second goal. And frankly, against this Leicester side, we should have been creating a lot more. Like they were sitting so deep and their defense is awful. I mean, Christensen on the left was just constantly getting skinned by Madueke throughout the entire match. Faes, in my opinion, Wout Faes is probably the worst defender in the top 3 leagues of England. He is that bad. I don't really know the other center defender, but it's not one of their top options because I think Vestergaard is the other one that was, they said he was injured, so that's why he wasn't playing today. And then Justin on the right, I know he's a pretty solid right back, but that's not a good defense. And I mean, you look at the second goal we scored, they are not a good defense. It was just a bunch of players standing and watching as Fernandez casually strolls in and finishes the follow-up. It was pathetic defending. So the fact that we only scored 2 today, I was saying before the match, I went I commented on, I think it was George Benson's video. I said, if we're not scoring 3 in this match, the front players, they've got some issues because we should be scoring with as much attacking talent as we have and as bad as their defense is. We should be scoring at least 3 in this match. We only got 2. And to be honest, we didn't really create much else. You could look at the Palmer chance that Madueke blocked. That probably could have been 3. But outside of that, I mean, most of our chances were half chances at best. We were having a lot of shots from outside the box. We were not really doing much to trouble them. And I think a lot of that was cut down to, I think Madueke was having a bad game today again. He started pretty well. I'll talk about his overall performance in a bit. But he started like he was going to have one of his better performances. But by second half, I'm thinking he's got to come off. We've got to get either Sancho or maybe Mudryk on the left side and slide Palmer out right. We got to get somebody out there, though, that's going to be a little bit more creative, or not even creative, just more aware of what's going on, because he was just wasting all these chances. And on top of that, I do think we kind of should have reverted back, because I think we needed our wings today, because it was Cucurella and Madueke who had all of the space today to work and create, and neither of them really were. Obviously, Cucurella got the cross in that set up the second goal, but most of his passes today were not coming off. And Madueke was his usual selfish self that was kind of wasting chance after chance after chance. So we needed those 2 wings because they were the ones that had all the space. The defense for Leicester was so narrow. There was so much time to get out wide and do something with it, but neither of them were. And that's where I'm looking at it going, you got to get Sancho or Mudryk on. And then I think slide Palmer out right. I know he's better as a 10, and I said the same thing. I think he's better as a 10. I don't think he's better out on the right side. However, I do think he can be effective there too. There were games last season where he was effective coming in from the right. So I think that is an option that needs to be looked at. If he's maybe being marked out because the other team is so narrow and they're defending so narrow and they're blocking him out of the match, I think it's a good option to slide him out right and give him some time to create something. Or if they're going to man mark him, now he's drawing somebody out right with them. And that's going to open up more space inside for your Felix, your Jackson, your Nkuku, whoever's in there to do something with it. But he didn't make any changes, Maresca, until the 81st minute. And then we saw a little bit more, I think it was a little bit more open of a game. Leicester definitely started to take it to us a little bit more. But I think at that point, I mean, you take Caicedo off, we're a little bit more open in the midfield. I don't think we're controlling as much without him in there. And Nkuku, he's a good player, not necessarily suited to an open game where we're going back and forth and back and forth. He has to get back and defend, but he also has to get up. He's not that type of player, I don't think. So I'm looking at it going, you've made these changes now, but the game's opening up. We need to have our pacey players. This is where Mudryk might be effective because he has space to run in behind now, but he didn't make those subs. So I do feel like his subs were not only too late, I also feel like they were not the right personnel, and that's why we saw Leicester have such a flurry at the end, because they put on the right subs to get them back into the game. I don't know why some of these players didn't start, because they definitely looked like they had more energy up front than anybody else who started, but I don't think we made the proper subs to counteract that, and so it let them get a little bit of a foothold in the game and made it a little bit more scary for us at the end. But with that being said, going into individuals, first of all, start off with Sanchez. Didn't really have much to do today outside of passing, so obviously he had a terrible game. I really do think he should have done better on the penalty, to be honest. It was not a great penalty. I know he guessed the wrong way and had to try to come back to it quickly, but I know this is probably more of a personal thing, but I always prefer to have my keeper, whenever I was coaching keepers, wait to see where they're going, set yourself, and then after they have the shot, then try to go save it. Don't guess, because most of the time when you guess, that's when you get embarrassed and they go straight down the middle and you just dive out of the way, basically. I know it's not really something that's done. Most of the time you do have instructions on, okay, where do they normally go? What side do they normally go to? You look at it, you study them, all of that. So I'm not saying that the way that they're doing it at the top level is wrong, but it does lead to moments like this where he guessed the wrong way, he takes a step that way, and now he's off balance, and it's an easy save. Like, it's basically right here. All he's got to do is just get a hand out and just push it away. But because his momentum's taking him this way, he's not able to get enough on it. And that's why I hate whenever keepers guess wrong. But yeah, his passing was, as usual, poor, which we've gotten used to. I will say that is a frustration whenever we have so much possession in their half and we're just knocking it around and we're trying to find that opening. And then all of a sudden, near the end of the first half, we did start playing back to him more. And that's all of a sudden when Leicester started to grow into the game. I wonder why. But I don't know why we started doing that. It was very bizarre. It was starting with Badiashile most of the time, where he'd get on the ball, he'd take a lot of slow touches, invite the pressure on. There's options available to him to get out of that pressure quickly, but because his slow touches are not helping him out, and he's not prepared to play, now he's not able to make that pass, and now he has to go backwards with it. And again, you bring Sanchez into the play, there's a very good chance he's going to lose the ball. So it was definitely where Leicester started to get a little bit of momentum in that first half. And that's just something we're going to have to deal with until we can get a keeper in that can play with his feet, because that's what Maresca wants to do. Into our defense, Fofana, and I'll throw Fofana and Badiashile kind of into the same category of they were both decently solid defensively, with the flaws that they typically have. You know, Fofana, his typical flaw is he steps up too high and he gets caught out of position too easily. Badiashile, his typical flaw is he's not fully aware of the game sometimes, and he's typically very slow on the ball. So those are the things that I typically see with the two of them, and against better teams, they typically punish us whenever Fofana makes that mistake and loses track of his runner, or whenever Badiashile makes a slow pass and now all of a sudden they invite the pressure on. But today, Leicester were just not really pressing us high until the end of the game. So it was kind of easy for them, and they didn't really have to come under too much pressure. But that's where that final flurry at the second half, it showed why these two are not good enough. And I really don't understand why Tosin didn't come in for Fofana. I know why. I know Fofana is the preferred defender, but I just do not understand why. I don't see what everybody sees in Fofana, because what I see is an error-prone defender who gets beat too easily, who gets caught out of position way too often. It's way too easy to get past him, and he's not really learning from it either, and that's also a frustration, because if you're making this mistake, you should look at that and go, I'm not going to do that again, but then he goes and does it again, and it never changes. So it's getting really frustrating, and I have to assume that Tosin is just not training well, and that's why he's not starting over Fofana. But I personally, from what I've seen on the field, I think Tosin is a better defender than Fofana is. I think he is a little bit more composed. He's got that experience over Fofana, and I think it really shows. Colwill in the center, I thought he was solid today. He's really grown into this team kind of quietly. I've not really had any complaints about him recently. A lot of the complaints I had were earlier this season, but I think as the season's gone along, I think he's gotten better. He's shown the quality that everybody claimed that he had last season that we were not seeing. So I'm glad to see that he has finally sort of found his place in this Maresca side. It's changed a little bit today because obviously he was the deepest one and he was kind of cleaning up the messes for everybody. But I think overall his performances have really stepped up, and I've not just his defensive performances, I think his passing as well has been very solid and has helped us out a lot too. Overall, very good performance. Kukure on the left side, pretty solid performance from him as well. It was one of his typical performances where he's just very busy. He's all over the field trying to make stuff happen. The quality in the final third was lacking a bit today, but I mean, he's a fullback, so I'm not really expecting, kind of like with Gusto against Arsenal, I'm not really expecting our fullbacks to be our main attacking threat. But unfortunately, the way we were set up today with him providing the width from the left, that's where a lot of the space that we had today was. So he was getting on the ball a lot and unfortunately just couldn't find that final pass. But it's a minor nitpick, and it's something that he's not really out there to do typically. So I'm going to give him a pass for that. Madueke on the right side, though, he is in there to do that type of stuff. He is in there when he gets in that space to make something happen. And I would say today, 4 out of 5 times he didn't. Again, first half, I thought he started really well. And he has these games typically against teams like Leicester. You think about the Wolves match, you think about the Forest match. He has these games where he kind of steps up and he plays really well and he looks dangerous and he gets on either the score sheet or he gets an assist. And all of a sudden everybody's talking about what a great winger he is and all this stuff. And then you just don't hear from him again for several matches. Well, it's been several matches, so I'm thinking, okay, Now's a good time for him to show what he can do again. And he started the first half like it was going to be one of those games. But as the game wore on, it started to turn more and more back into that Madueke that I can't stand. The selfishness, the lack of awareness when there's a better option available, it doesn't matter. As soon as he's decided that he wants to cut in and have a shot, or as soon as he's decided that he wants to go down the line and cross it in, that's what he's going to do. It's just so frustrating to watch him sometimes because you look at the whole field and you're thinking if you could just get your head up for a half of a second, you would see you've got a great cutback option. You would see you've got a great pass that you can maybe do a little 1-2 and get him behind the defender. You would see you've got somebody you can lay it off to top of the box that could have a better shot, better angle than what you've got. But he doesn't see any of it. It's just, he's got the blinders on as soon as he starts driving either down the line or inside. There's one thing on his mind, and that's it. So just very simple-minded with the ball sometimes, and it gets very frustrating. And like I said with the Forest match, the goal was good, and I'm glad that he scored it, so we managed to salvage the point there. But you look at the first half, there were several times we probably could have scored if he were not so bad at decision-making, because there were better options that probably would have scored, but he made the wrong decision, and then we didn't score, and then all of a sudden it's halftime, and it's still 0-0 against Forest. Today, I kind of felt like there were moments in the second half before Enzo scored that I'm thinking we're wasting these chances, and he's wasting these chances. It's getting scary because it's only 1-0, and all it takes is one defensive error from Fofana, from Badiashile, from Sanchez. All it takes is one, and all of a sudden they're back in the game. Even when we scored two, there's still moments whenever we could have scored a third, and it's just it gets really annoying, honestly. But now, after talking about some of the negatives, let's go to the two big positives today. That is Caicedo and Fernandes. The two of them were phenomenal. Fernandes, for me, man of the match, not just because of the goal and the assist. He was on fire today. And it's so funny to me because I look back to about the Liverpool match. Fernandes had a pretty poor run of games. Lavia comes in against Liverpool and looks great. And I'm thinking, well, that's got to be it for Fernandes then. He's not been good so far this season. Lavia comes in and he looks amazing. That's got to be it for him. Fast forward to now, Lavia's had a pretty run of games. Now he gives away a penalty today, and it wasn't, as soon as he came on, we kind of lost control of the midfield with him in there. So he's not really been looking that great since the Liverpool match, and Fernandes, the past few games that he's featured in, he's looked phenomenal. And now all of a sudden today, he puts in a man of the match performance. He might be back. But I will say that does highlight, again, part of the problem with what we have at the moment. It's why we're still not ready for a title challenge and why top four is still kind of iffy at the moment. I think we are in the driver's seat, but I'm not saying that it's definitely we are top four. It's going to be we're challenging for top four because we have inconsistencies still. We have these players that can run hot and cold. Fernandes right now, he's running hot. Doesn't mean he's not going to cool down soon. Doesn't mean he's not going to all of a sudden have a run of games where he's not passing well. He's getting beat too easily. Granted, I think today was a good game for him because Leicester were sitting so deep. He had time to get on the ball and make stuff happen, and that's typically what he does pretty well. But it's the games whenever it's a little bit more open, back and forth, up and down the field, that's when I think he struggles the most. So it might just end up being where we see Lavia in games where it's Arsenal or it's Man U or it's Tottenham or it's Liverpool. We see those matches where it's up and down the field and you need Lavia with his pace and his strength to get up and down. Granted, he's got to improve because, like I said, he's not been playing that well recently. But it might be that he's better suited to those type of matches, whereas Fernandes is better suited to the matches where teams are going to pack it in against us and we're going to have plenty of time to get on the ball and try to make things happen. And Caicedo is just another typical great performance from him. I mean, just breaking up the play, no problems in the midfield when he's in there. Like I said, it showed whenever he came out because all of a sudden we lost control of that midfield without him in there. So he's definitely becoming an undroppable player in my opinion. And honestly, I still cannot really believe that I'm saying that about Caicedo, of all players, because I truly thought he was a waste of money last season. All the performances I saw from him up until the end of the season, I was so convinced. Even at the end of the season, I'm thinking, okay, well, he's gotten better, but he's still not the £100 million player that we brought in. Now, all of a sudden, I I 100% agree that he is worth that money because he looks like he is reaching like prime Conte era, and it's great to see. And on top of that, something I noticed today that I will point out, I think his passing forward has also improved. Sometimes the passes side to side can still be a little iffy, but I think his passes forward really cutting up the defense today. There were several moments where he just made one pass and all of a sudden the midfield is beaten because he managed to find the right pass to the right player, and now we're in behind at their defense. For me, he's really shown how much quality he has, and he's still young, so he can only get better, hopefully. We'll see where he goes from here. But now the two in behind the striker, Palmer today, like I said, he was a little bit quieter. He wasn't really at it today. I don't know how much of that is because of the knocks he's been taking, and I don't know how much of it is maybe it's a mental thing. He's definitely not at the same level that we've seen him for most of this season, though. Today, I think the frustration for me is obviously he could have had a goal if not for Madueke, but it's more so his overall play today, I thought, kind of suffered. Because we saw him against Man U, we saw him against Arsenal. Obviously, he didn't get on the score sheet there. I think he did get an assist in one of the matches, though. But the frustration is in those matches, he was not really quiet. He didn't do anything in the final third, and that's where we needed him the most. He was still making stuff happen in the middle of the park. He was getting the ball. He was looking dangerous. He was finding good passes. He just was not finding that final pass or that final shot that we're used to seeing him. Today, I don't even really think he had many of those moments. I feel like most of the time when he got on the ball, it was very simple. He kept it kind of safe and calm. I didn't really see a lot of those killer passes that he can make from time to time. I feel like a lot of his forward passes, he was hitting the defender right in front of him, or they were not quite right. They were a little off. So I do feel like his overall play today was just not quite as good as what we've seen, even in the games when people say he was kept quiet. I think even in those games, he was still very quietly doing his job and making us look effective. I don't feel like we had that from him today. Thankfully, I think Felix stepped up in his place, though, because he had a pretty solid game. And I did see some stuff about Maresca saying Felix and Palmer could play in the same team. If this is how he plans to do it, I think that could work, assuming Palmer obviously steps up a bit more. Because if the two of them are firing at all cylinders, I think that's a very dangerous two in behind the striker. You've got Palmer dropping a bit deeper to get on the ball, find Felix. Felix is very good at finding those little slide passes in behind, right behind the defense, find the striker, find the wing running inside. Yeah, I do think that's a combo that probably could work, but again, it relies on Palmer being a little bit more effective with his passing. Yeah, good game from Felix today. I think he probably should have scored. He had a couple of good chances that he wasted, but that's something we've seen from him before. So hopefully it's one of those, once he gets a goal in the Premier League, we'll see the confidence grow and we'll see him start to put in some good chances. But his passing today and his dangerous runs, his ability to keep the ball in tight spaces as well, definitely make him a very dangerous player. And then Jackson up top, obviously got himself the goal. He did well to fight off Foss, but again, you're fighting off somebody who probably shouldn't even be playing in the championship, let alone League One. But he did well to have the finish at the end of it. So I do think he was sort of marked out of the game for a bit of it, but he did take some good chances. He had the header that led to Fernandez's goal, obviously got his own goal, and then he put in a good cross to Madueke that Madueke screwed. So I think overall, even though he was not as involved as I probably would like him to be, I think he still did well with what little bit of time he did have to be involved. I think he did well with most of it. And honestly, I do think if he's being marked out of the game, that means other players around him should be getting space because they're putting both defenders on him to try to keep him from having time and space. So that's where like I said, Palmer should probably be stepping up and taking up that space and making something happen with it, but he just really wasn't today. As far as the subs that came on, Nkunku did okay. I still think there's more to come from him, and obviously there's a lot of talk that he's unhappy. We'll see. I think definitely whenever we get to like the Conference League and the FA Cup matches, I think that's where we'll see where his mindset is. If he's flying, just absolutely giving it his all, I think we can surmise that he wants to stay and he wants to fight for his place. But if we see him kind of what we saw against Noah, where scores, doesn't really celebrate, I think the rumors will only grow and grow until somebody steps up and squashes him. Lavia was the other one that came on around that time, and I already talked about him. Sancho came on for Madueke. Good to see him back because I did have my concerns whenever he was out with illness for a long time. There was a concern that is it this attitude problem that we've heard of before. But seemingly, he's back from his illness and he's right back onto the bench at least. And he's one of the subs off the bench. So I don't know. There's probably going to be still speculation about him until he plays more. But I thought he came on and did pretty well. Kept the ball in some tight situations, looked a bit dangerous at times. And that's what we needed from him. We needed to keep the ball out of our back line. We needed to keep possession away from back there. So whenever he did get the ball, I felt like he did a good job of making sure that we didn't lose it and go back again. And then the final one was Dewsbury-Hall. And that one just kind of felt almost like fan service for the Leicester fans. Like, hey, here's this guy from the coach that brought you up back to the Premier League. Here's this guy who helped me do it. And they got to give him a little standing ovation. So it was like last couple minutes. It didn't really feel very impactful on the match. It like I said, fan service more than anything. But looking at the positives of it, it's a win on the road. It's a difficult match where we kind of had to grind, and we managed to grind it out. Still didn't keep the clean sheet, which is disappointing. But this is the type of match that I think last season we don't get that second goal, and they score that late equalizer, and now we're demoralized because we couldn't hold on to the win. So good to at least see we did get the second goal, but there definitely are problems. There are a couple players that I think are underperforming right now, and obviously we've got a couple players, Neto and Gusto, out. James is out again. I think it's going to be a little rough if we keep having these injury problems pop up bit by bit, but seemingly Maresca does seem to have an idea of what he wants to do whenever those injury problems do pop up. So hopefully we'll continue to see that if the injury problems persist. But for now, I am happy with the win. I've dealt with a lot of people who hear my criticisms, hear my critiques of players and decisions and all that, and think that, oh, well, you hate the club because you talk about all the bad stuff. That's not the case. I look at the good and the bad. I point out the good players. I point out the bad players. The bad stuff does need to be focused on because those are the types of things that against better teams, whenever we play the Liverpools, the Arsenals, the Man Cities, the bad stuff will show up a lot more. It will be a lot more apparent. But in my opinion, to just ignore it because, oh, well, we won, so we don't have to criticize anything. To me, that's kind of naive. It's almost like crossing a lake in a little boat that has a leak in it, and you look at the leak, but the lake is pretty small, so you manage to make it across and the boat doesn't sink, and you go, see, the boat's fine. And then you try to cross an ocean. The leak is obviously going to affect you on the ocean compared to a lake. That's kind of what I look at when I see all these little problems, these little criticisms against whenever we're playing the Leicesters of the league. If these problems are popping up but not hurting us now, we need to solve them now. Because whenever we do eventually face those oceans in Man City and Liverpool, the problems will be a lot more apparent and they will hurt us a lot more in those matches. But anyways, those are just my rambly thoughts on the Leicester match. Obviously, we have a lot of games coming up because it's winter time, and this is where things get really rough. But thankfully, we do have somewhat of a system set up now, and this is where we'll see how much having two different teams, how much is that going to help us? How much is Maresca going to make these same changes even whenever it's a midweek game that's a Premier League match compared to it's a midweek game that's a Conference League match? That's where I really do wonder how it's going to look. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. We're third, and we're comfortably third, at least for now. I don't know how the 10 o'clock matches, or I guess 3 o'clock if you're in England. I don't know how those are going right now. Last I saw, Palace was ahead of Villa, and Forest and Arsenal were still level. I did see Brighton was ahead, though, pretty early on. But with all that being said, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on the game today? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Chelsea reviews. Also, check out the channel. We have a couple Let's Plays on there, as well as a ton of TV show reviews, so check those out if you have time. But until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. And I'll talk to you all later. Peace out.